Commerce City wasn't known for its homicides. The rare ones it did see came with reasons: jealousy, drugs, desperation. But this one came quietly, without warning, and left behind nothing but a body and a silence that didn't make sense. On August 13, 2020, dispatch received a routine call for a welfare check. The caller was a co-worker of 33-year-old Cody DeLisa, reporting that he hadn't shown up for work and wasn't answering his phone. Cody wasn't the type to vanish or ignore responsibility. He worked warehouse logistics, clocked in early, and took his job seriously. When he didn't reply to texts or calls for over 24 hours, concern turned procedural. Officers from the Commerce City Police Department were dispatched to his home just after 4 p.m. The residence, located on Newport Street, looked undisturbed from the outside. One car was parked in the driveway. The blinds were closed, the front door was locked. Officers circled to the rear of the property and noted that the back door was slightly ajar. No visible signs of forced entry, no damage to the lock, no evidence of a break-in. Inside, the air was still. The kitchen sink was dry. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat next to the microwave. The TV was off, the couch undisturbed. Everything in the living room looked intact, but the bedroom told a different story. Cody was found face down on the mattress, blood pooling below him and soaking through the sheets. He had been shot twice in the back of the head at close range. There was no sign of struggle, no overturned furniture, no blood trail leading in or out. The scene was static, intact, deliberately controlled. There were no visible weapons in the room, no spent casings in plain view. The rest of the house appeared undisturbed. A phone charger was still plugged in by the nightstand, but no phone was present. The wallet was missing. The front door had been deadbolted from the inside, suggesting the killer exited through the same back door the officers had entered. Officers cleared the rest of the property, confirmed no one else was present, and immediately secured the scene. By 4:45 p.m., the case had been escalated to homicide. Crime scene technicians arrived just after 6:30 p.m. and began documenting the environment. The rear entry point showed no pry marks, no splintered frame, no indication that force had been used. The latch and strike plate were intact. It hadn't been forced. It had been opened willingly, possibly with a key. The home's interior told a story of familiarity, not panic. Dishes were clean and drying on a rack. A jacket was neatly folded on the chair. 2 toothbrushes were still in the bathroom. One belonged to Cody, the other presumably to Ashley White. White was 27 years old, known to be Cody's live-in girlfriend for nearly a year. She was not at the residence. Her personal belongings were still in place: clothes, shoes, cosmetics. Her purse, however, was gone. The car parked outside belonged to Cody. No other vehicles were registered to White, and neighbors didn't recall seeing her leave. When asked, a neighbor stated, "She'd been here earlier that week. They were arguing again. Then it got quiet." At 6:41 p.m., officers issued a bolo for Ashley White, not as a suspect but as a missing person and key witness. The wording was deliberate. The scene lacked evidence of a break-in, lacked forced violence, lacked movement. It lacked chaos. It was a quiet killing, and that was what made it disturbing. By 7:30 p.m., initial forensic assessments had been made. The bedroom carpet showed no drag marks or disturbances around the body. No blood spatter was found in adjoining rooms. The only active blood pool was beneath Cody's head and torso, which indicated he had been killed exactly where he lay. Close-range gunshots to the base of the skull, executed cleanly, quickly, from behind. That level of precision wasn't common in domestic homicides, and there was no defensive trauma, no bruising, no hesitation wounds. Cody's last known activity was a text message sent at 2:17 p.m. to Ashley's number. It read, "Guess we'll see." That message, alongside time-stamped grocery footage placing Cody at a local market at 10:12 a.m., helped narrow the estimated time of death to between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Based on body temperature and lividity, the medical examiner would later confirm the victim had died within that window. Cody's co-workers described him as patient, responsible, and increasingly withdrawn in recent months. He was stressed about home, one of them said, felt like things were unraveling with her, like he couldn't fix it. There were no known threats, no reported domestic violence calls to the address, but Ashley's name and the details of her disappearance quickly became the focal point of the investigation. The initial hours didn't produce answers. They only created questions. If this wasn't a break-in, why was Cody executed? If Ashley had left, why hadn't she contacted anyone? And if she had nothing to do with it, Why had she taken his wallet? By nightfall, the investigation had only two certainties. Cody DeLisa was dead, Ashley White was missing, and nothing at that scene made immediate sense. By the morning of August 14, 2020, investigators had begun compiling the digital and personal profile of Ashley White. While crime scene processing continued at the Newport Street residence, the lead detective assigned to the case, Sergeant Lisa Marquez, requested an expedited background pull. Ashley, age 27, had no active warrants, no prior arrests, and no history of reported domestic violence, at least not on record. But what the initial background check didn't show, the digital footprint began to expose. Ashley had lived at the Newport address with Cody for approximately 10 months. Lease records confirmed both names. According to DMV files, she previously resided at a one-bedroom unit in Aurora before moving in with Cody. Prior landlords described her as quiet but unpredictable, with one mentioning verbal disturbances overheard from time to time. No police reports were ever filed in those prior incidents. The most recent employment record listed her as a part-time cashier at a local bookstore, but that job ended 8 months prior. Since then, unemployment benefits had been deposited regularly into her checking account. Financial analysis revealed minimal activity, some food deliveries, small retail charges, and overdraft fees. No consistent income. No recent job applications on record through Colorado's workforce systems. According to her social media, which hadn't been updated in nearly a year, she was between creative projects and not defined by a 9 to 5. Cell tower data confirmed that her phone had last pinged near the Newport residence around 3 p.m. on the day Cody was killed. After that, the phone either died or was turned off. There was no outgoing activity past that point, no calls, no texts, no GPS trace. Her bank card, however, was used just under 90 minutes later at a gas station 4 miles away. Surveillance footage from that location showed a woman resembling Ashley, hoodie drawn up, standing beside a man wearing a baseball cap and cargo jacket. The camera angle was partially obscured, but it was enough to raise concern. That man hadn't been seen before. He hadn't been mentioned by anyone interviewed thus far. The forensic team began working with the image, enhancing the footage and distributing it internally to identify the unknown male. Meanwhile, a forensic extraction request was sent to the phone provider to recover any deleted text data from Ashley's number. The phone itself remained missing. While digital assets were being recovered, investigators turned back to physical space. At the residence, items in the bathroom and bedroom confirmed Ashley had not left in haste. Makeup bags, jewelry, clothing, even prescription medications remained untouched. Her personal journal was located beneath the bed, bound in a faux leather cover. It was not collected immediately as evidence, but a cursory review of entries suggested strained relationship dynamics. Several notes referenced feeling worthless, trapped, and always talked down to. These entries spanned months, not days, indicating a prolonged emotional deterioration rather than a sudden emotional collapse. A secondary line of inquiry opened through Cody's friends and coworkers. In interviews, several reported that Cody had recently become more withdrawn. He seemed burned out, tired of the drama at home, one said. Another coworker recalled Cody joking, "Maybe I should start charging rent. At least then, she'd have a reason to look for a job." Statements like those wouldn't mean much in isolation, but they were added to the victimology file. The pattern they began to form was not about overt conflict, but simmering resentment, low-grade, constant, and unresolved. By mid-afternoon on August 14th, the preliminary autopsy report was delivered. The 2 gunshot wounds were at close range, estimated distance less than 18 inches. Entry angle was consistent with the victim lying prone at the time. There were no defensive wounds on the hands, no bruises, and no signs of struggle. Toxicology was clean. Time of death placed Cody's murder between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m., aligning precisely with the message he had sent to Ashley earlier that day. A single sentence, "Guess we'll see." Investigators reviewed the context of that message, pulling prior conversations from Cody's unlocked laptop. The communication tone between him and Ashley in the week leading up to the murder was increasingly terse. Cody appeared frustrated. Ashley responded infrequently, and when she did, with emotionally flat language. No overt threats, but a clear breakdown in connection. That breakdown extended into Ashley's digital behavior. Search history pulled from her Chrome browser showed recent visits to job search sites, but also late-night queries. How to disappear? Can I be charged if I don't pull the trigger? And how to prove emotional abuse without witnesses. Each of these was dated within 5 days before Cody's death. One entry stood out: how to talk someone into helping you. It wasn't an admission, but it wasn't random either. This was the first time investigators paused. Sergeant Marquez noted in her log, the data aligned too cleanly. Sometimes that was the problem. The picture emerging wasn't of a woman who panicked. It was of someone who planned ahead, poorly, but deliberately. And yet no concrete proof had yet tied Ashley directly to the act of pulling a trigger. The man seen in the surveillance footage, unknown, unaccounted for, was now critical. Before the chapter on Ashley White could be closed, another needed to be opened. Who was he, and how did she find him? The shift in momentum came not from a confession or physical clue at the crime scene, but from a transit log, buried inside a routine data request issued by the Commerce City Police Department to RTD, the Regional Transportation District. Investigators were trying to reconstruct Ashley White's movements on the day of the homicide. The assumption was simple. If she didn't own a vehicle, she used the bus. The data came back within 24 hours. Ashley had scanned her fare card at Union Station in Denver at 12:44 p.m. on August 13th. She boarded the 72M route heading northeast, a ride that would take her within walking distance of the Newport Street residence. The timestamp put her roughly 2 hours away from the estimated time of Cody's death. On its own, that meant very little, but RTD buses were equipped with forward and aisle-facing cameras, and those cameras recorded more than passengers realized. Footage from bus 4107 captured Ashley seated near the middle of the vehicle. She wore a black hoodie and jeans. Her hair was pulled back. She wasn't on her phone. She wasn't reading. She was staring forward, unmoving. The time code, 12:46 to 1:28 p.m. At 12:52 p.m., a man boarded at 15th and Stout. He sat down 2 seats away from her. Tall, thin, dark ball cap, olive green jacket, jeans. He carried nothing visible. There was no familiarity between them, at least not at first. But about 10 minutes later, they started talking. Audio on bus systems is limited, but frame-by-frame analysis of their body language suggested engagement, leaning in, eye contact, direct conversation. Investigators flagged the footage immediately. The man's face was partially obscured, but not enough to avoid identification efforts. The bus logs confirmed he exited at the same stop as Ashley, 1 block from Cody's residence. They exited within 2 seconds of one another. No interaction recorded after that point. The man was not Cody. The man had not appeared in any known footage connected to Cody's workplace or Ashley's prior addresses. He was new, and now he was vital. Composite stills were generated and circulated internally. Crime analysts began cross-checking local records, facial recognition hits, and any outstanding persons of interest with similar physical descriptions. Simultaneously, digital forensics flagged a Wi-Fi signal hit from Cody's home router around 1:59 p.m., a new MAC address, previously unrecognized. The device had remained connected for 27 minutes before dropping offline. This signal was likely the unknown male's phone. The signal data helped establish a second timeline. Ashley and the unidentified man entered the house sometime after 1:30 p.m. A new device connected to the router at 1:59 p.m. By 2:17 p.m., Cody had sent his final text. Based on the autopsy window, Cody was likely killed between 2 o'clock and 2:30 p.m. The device disconnected by 2:26 p.m., narrowing the suspect's presence to under 30 minutes. The alignment was too precise to ignore. Detectives returned to the bus footage and ran it against regional law enforcement databases. No matches, no hits, no known offender profiles aligned with the visual data. The man hadn't been booked locally in the last 5 years. He wasn't in CODIS or the National Felony Arrest Index. But the angle from the aisle cam did capture a faint emblem on the back of his jacket, a Texas-based oilfield service logo, barely visible but distinct. That led to the first viable theory. The man wasn't from Commerce City. He wasn't part of Cody or Ashley's known social sphere. He may not have even been from Colorado. If Ashley had met him recently, it had to be in a place where anonymity was possible, online. Detectives submitted subpoenas for all public Wi-Fi activity logs from Ashley's devices, including known IP addresses used at cafes, libraries, and shelters in the weeks before Cody's death. One cafe downtown returned hits. Ashley had logged into public Wi-Fi 5 times over 2 weeks. Her device connected for hours at a time, usually late mornings, and accessed anonymous chat platforms during each session. Investigators reviewed cached page data from her browser, One URL stood out, a message board known for unmoderated, anonymous discussions. The retrieved threads were inconsistent, fragmented, but one line was preserved in a local cache. "He says he'll help if I really mean it." The post was time-stamped 5 days before Cody's death. Ashley's browser history showed no replies. No user handle could be traced to her directly, but it was enough to widen the scope of the investigation. The man from the bus was no longer a background figure. He was now considered an unknown actor in the timeline of an active homicide. To make this case viable for prosecution, physical linkage would be required. But the man hadn't left blood, fingerprints, or DNA, at least none that had yet been recovered. The only artifact was digital: his presence on the bus, his appearance in surveillance, and a fleeting connection to Cody's Wi-Fi. Detectives requested facial recognition enhancement from the State Fusion Center. The hope was simple: locate a name before the trail went cold. Meanwhile, the manhunt shifted into a multi-jurisdictional search. Forensic sequencing was expanded, and a new theory began forming, not about why Cody died, but about how a man with no prior connection to him became involved. The answer, it seemed, would not come from the body. It would come from the data. August 15th, 2020. Crime scene techs returned to the Newport Street residence to conduct a secondary forensic sweep focused on areas initially deprioritized. The objective had shifted, now less about reconstructing the act of murder and more about determining if anything had occurred on the property prior to Cody DeLisa's death. Specifically, they were looking for pre-homicide preparation, weapon handling, test firing, or disposal behavior. The backyard, fenced and partially overgrown, hadn't drawn much attention during the initial processing, but following the discovery of a transient Wi-Fi signal linked to an unknown device, believed to belong to the unidentified male seen with Ashley White, investigators sought to determine where that device had been in proximity to the home and for how long. A new method was used: heat mapping signal strength using archived router telemetry. The mapping narrowed activity to the rear of the house. Techs performed a grid search of the backyard using trajectory laser kits and portable metal detectors. Near the southeast fence line, an anomaly was flagged: small, disturbed soil, not consistent with typical backyard use. Soil sampling led to the recovery of 2 spent .22 caliber shell casings. Both were lodged beneath the surface, corrosion minimal. Ballistic markings confirmed they had been fired from the same type of weapon believed used in Cody's murder. There were no witnesses to anyone firing a gun in the backyard. Neighbors reported no sounds of gunshots during the day in question. One neighbor described hearing a pop sound the afternoon before the homicide, but dismissed it as firecrackers, common in the neighborhood even outside holiday periods. The discovery of the shell casings changed the timeline again. If someone had test-fired a weapon behind the house, it likely happened while Cody was still alive inside. It also clarified that the shooter wasn't testing in panic. The weapon was introduced, handled, and fired outside the structure, deliberately, before any confrontation occurred inside. The search team found no weapon at the scene, no cleaning materials, no gun oil residue inside. But near the base of a rain barrel, they located a latex glove partially buried under gravel. Analysis returned partial touch DNA, later matched to Ashley White. Further examination of the glove revealed trace residues, gunpowder particulates, and skin cells consistent with male biological markers. The glove was not torn. It had been removed cleanly and discarded. The glove didn't place Ashley at the trigger, but it placed her at the scene, handling something in tandem with another individual prior to the homicide. Additional soil samples from the glove location tested positive for nitroglycerin and lead styphnate, components of .22 caliber primer compounds. The conclusion was that the firearm had been loaded or manipulated at that location. With no surveillance in the backyard and no weapon recovered, investigators turned to logistical forensics. Could the gun have been brought in, fired, and removed without detection? The answer came through a review of RTD station cameras. Bus surveillance showed the unknown male carrying a folded jacket over his arm when boarding. Infrared footage revealed a rigid outline inside the fabric, consistent with a concealed object roughly 6 to 7 inches in length. That image became crucial. Though blurry, it indicated the weapon had likely been carried onto public transit, concealed, and transported to the residence in plain sight. Investigators reviewed Colorado's registry of .22 caliber handgun purchases from the last 5 years. Ashley White's name did not appear. Cody DeLisa had no registered firearms. The database search came back negative for the unknown male, no legal record tied to the likely weapon. One final test site was logged, a small shed at the edge of the property. The interior had been overlooked earlier due to lack of power and limited visibility. A new UV sweep revealed multiple particle clusters consistent with primer residue. While not admissible as definitive proof of firearm use, it strengthened the narrative. Whoever came with Ashley didn't bring a weapon just for intimidation. They prepared for it to be used. Sergeant Lisa Marquez updated the case log with a simple entry. Weapon brought, weapon tested, weapon used. Timeline tightening. The backyard wasn't just the space behind a crime scene. It had become part of the crime scene. The breakthrough came from a seemingly minor detail flagged in Chapter 3, a faint logo on the back of the unknown male's jacket caught in RTD surveillance. It was a stitched emblem, partially obstructed by motion blur, but analysts from the Regional Fusion Center enhanced the image using spectral filters. The logo was confirmed as belonging to a Texas-based oilfield service company, Delgado Pipeworks LLC, a contractor that operated in West Texas and southeastern New Mexico. Their field jackets were standard issue, distributed only to on-site employees, with a known inventory of roughly 600 units. Commerce City PD contacted the company's HR department through official request, attaching the enhanced image and time-stamped footage. Within 72 hours, a match was identified. Michael Stratton, 31, a former pump technician terminated for absenteeism in late 2019. Stratton had not returned company property, including uniform jackets. His last known address in the system was in Odessa, Texas, but mail forwarding had been discontinued over a year ago. Stratton had no known link to Cody DeLisa, no shared residence, workplace, or social ties. But a background check revealed a series of misdemeanor charges, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and a 2016 incident involving a domestic protection order filed by a prior partner. Charges in that case had been dropped due to non-cooperation of the complainant. Investigators pulled DMV records and driver's license images. The physical description, height, build, facial structure, aligned with the man seen exiting the bus with Ashley White. Further confirmation came from facial recognition software used on the gas station surveillance tape, where Ashley and the man had been spotted shortly after the murder using Cody's debit card. Stratton's profile produced a 91% match. Sergeant Marquez coordinated with the Texas Rangers and Odessa PD to initiate a search for Stratton, but he hadn't been seen in his home state in nearly a year. Local records indicated a known associate, Cara Mendez, a woman with whom Stratton had lived briefly, had moved to Denver in early 2020. She had no criminal history, but her phone number was still active on file. Detectives contacted her for an interview. In her initial statement, Mendez was cooperative. She admitted that Stratton had followed her to Colorado uninvited and had crashed on couches in the Denver metro area during the spring and summer. She described him as paranoid, increasingly agitated, and obsessed with what he called the justice no one would give him. When asked if she recognized Ashley White, she said no. But when shown a still from the RTD bus footage, her response changed. "That looks like the girl he mentioned online, the one who said she needed help." She clarified that Stratton had shown her a screenshot from a message board sometime in early August. The post was anonymous, vague, and emotionally charged, complaints about abuse, fear, and a plea for intervention. Stratton believed the post was directed to him. He considered it a call to action. According to Mendez, Stratton had no job, no permanent housing, and no stable contacts in Colorado. He often used public libraries for internet access and spoke regularly about people needing to be removed. She had cut off contact 2 weeks before the murder, citing fear for her safety. Library usage logs, cross-referenced with Stratton's name and former email accounts, indicated that he had accessed anonymous chat platforms on 5 separate occasions in late July and early August 2020. At least 2 of those sessions aligned with Ashley White's recorded logins at the same downtown public library Wi-Fi node. No direct message content could be retrieved. Data had long expired or been scrubbed, but IP address correlation placed them within 20 feet of one another during overlapping time frames. This wasn't coincidence. This was contact. Investigators issued a formal BOLO for Stratton statewide and secured a warrant for Ashley White on accessory to murder and conspiracy charges, pending full reconstruction of her communications and digital behavior. Cody's family was notified privately that the case had expanded into multi-state coordination. At the same time, the public release of Stratton's name and image was withheld. Without an active threat or further crimes, law enforcement opted for quiet pursuit over exposure. Ashley White remained unlocated. Stratton had become a name, but not a presence, and every unanswered detail in their connection drew a sharper focus on motive. Who planned what, who executed what, and why. On August 19th, 4 days after Stratton was identified by facial recognition, a significant development occurred. Denver PD officers recovered a black Android smartphone from a recycling kiosk inside a convenience store near Colfax Avenue. The device had been dropped anonymously, but staff reported seeing a woman matching Ashley White's description enter the store late the previous evening, approach the kiosk, and leave in under 3 minutes. Surveillance footage confirmed it was her. The phone was powered off, SIM card removed, but device serials matched a unit tied to Ashley's unemployment account login. With a warrant already in place, digital forensics began full extraction using Cellebrite software. Despite factory reset attempts, core data from cloud-linked backups remained retrievable. Analysts focused on 4 specific areas: anonymous browser use, file transfers, cached app data, and geolocation history. First, search history. In the 2 weeks leading to Cody's murder, Ashley's device recorded dozens of inquiries centered around coercion law, third-party revenge, and multiple iterations of phrases like how to get someone to take the fall. While none explicitly referenced violence, the intent behind the queries suggested knowledge of consequences. These were not questions posed by someone seeking therapy or an exit strategy. They were attempts to navigate the limits of criminal accountability. Next, message fragments. Though traditional texting apps had been deleted, cached data recovered from an encrypted chat app, believed to be an open-source platform used for anonymous interaction, contained auto-saved metadata. Several files revealed Ashley had engaged in high-volume exchanges with an unlisted contact between August 2nd and August 12th. The content was unavailable, but timestamps indicated prolonged and frequent communication, sometimes over 90 minutes per session. Forensic analysts also identified a local note file titled simply Plan. Though incomplete, it contained bulleted entries including Meet Again 2's library, bus route confirmed, sits near back, don't bring phone, cash only, no prints, distraction equals sign noise from kitchen, exit separately, one line, only touch door after gloves, stood out. It matched the glove discovered in the gravel near the rain barrel. Geolocation data revealed Ashley had visited 2 locations repeatedly before the homicide: a small cafe in downtown Denver, and a public library branch off Broadway. Stratton had been placed at both through Wi-Fi logs and prior testimony from Cara Mendez. IP handshakes placed both devices in the same subnet during 3 critical windows: July 31st, August 4th, and August 10th. In digital forensic terms, they were sitting in the same room. That data closed the distance between them. No longer was Stratton just a drifter Ashley happened to meet. The evidence now pointed to persistent coordination, intentional, physical, and digital. When presented with this data, the district attorney's office shifted strategy. Ashley White's status changed from person of interest to co-conspirator. A formal indictment was prepared. The new charges included second-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and accessory after the fact. Prosecutors believe she may not have pulled the trigger, but she facilitated the entire structure of the crime. The prosecution's theory took form. Ashley had not chosen to flee alone. She had chosen to involve a man willing to act on delusions of chivalry or revenge. The data did not show panic. It showed design. Cody's family was notified of the expanded charges privately, and a representative from Victim Services began preparing them for the possibility that this would become a dual-defendant trial, depending on Stratton's eventual apprehension. Meanwhile, Ashley's physical location remained unknown. No ATM usage, no phone signals, no travel records. But the digital version of her had already testified, word by word, timestamp by timestamp, in silence. By late August 2020, both Ashley White and Michael Stratton were subjects of active felony warrants. Ashley was charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy. Stratton, though not formally indicted yet, was labeled a prime suspect in the homicide of Cody DeLisa. The physical evidence, digital links, and behavioral indicators pointed to joint planning and execution, but neither individual had been seen since Stratton was last caught on the gas station camera on August 13th, and Ashley had dumped her phone 4 days later. No digital signals had surfaced since then. The investigation transitioned into tactical search operations. A joint task force was formed between Commerce City PD, Denver Police, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Federal assistance came from the U.S. Marshals Service. Stratton's absence from state records suggested he was either intentionally off-grid or receiving help. His name was added to the NCIC wanted persons file. A flag was also placed on regional hospital admissions for anyone matching his physical description. The break came not from law enforcement, but from a delayed surveillance check. On August 28, 12 days after Cody's murder, RTD security flagged a match in a lower-resolution transit camera. Stratton had boarded a northbound bus in Fort Collins at 9:42 a.m. The timestamp suggested he was moving between cities, an intentional maneuver to avoid detection. He wore the same olive jacket identified earlier, but had shaved his facial hair. He carried a plastic bag, no backpack. The transit log placed him on a route ending in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Investigators relayed this to state police, who reviewed traffic cams and identified a man matching Stratton's description walking on foot near a motel on the southern edge of Cheyenne the same afternoon. When agents arrived, the room registered under the name Marcus T. had already been vacated, but inside, hotel cleaning staff had found discarded wrappers, a burner phone box, and a motel brochure for a cheaper location in Casper, an industrial town 3 hours north. The phone box's serial was tied to a prepaid unit activated the day before the motel stay. Subscriber identity had not been registered, but tower hits showed it pinged near the Cheyenne Motel the night of August 27th, and again near Casper by the morning of August 29th. The U.S. Marshals determined that Stratton was likely moving north, possibly to lose investigators in low-population corridors. Coordination expanded to include Wyoming law enforcement. Patrols were briefed. A vehicle interdiction team was deployed to high-frequency travel corridors. Casper PD was tasked with canvassing local motels and shelters. On August 30th, an overnight desk clerk at the Gray Cliff Motel recalled a man paying cash for a room and refusing housekeeping service. The name used, Eric L. Surveillance footage from the front desk confirmed it was Stratton. A tactical decision was made to intercept rather than surveil. Law enforcement surrounded the motel at 4:18 a.m. on August 31st. The operation was clean. No forced entry was required. Stratton opened the door and surrendered without incident. Inside, a loaded .22 pistol was found tucked under the mattress. The serial number had been scratched, but toolmark analysis later restored a partial imprint tied to a manufacturer in Texas. Ballistics comparison with the backyard shell casings in Commerce City showed consistent striations. The weapon was a likely match. Stratton was taken into custody and transported to Larimer County under protective watch. He declined to speak with investigators. No confession was made. He requested a public defender. Fingerprint scans were taken and logged. His hands bore superficial scarring, possibly from long-term exposure or minor burns. One print, left index, matched a partial found on the interior of the glove recovered from the Newport Street property. With Stratton secured, attention returned to locating Ashley. Stratton had no phone, no wallet, no digital trail leading back to her. When asked at booking if he was traveling alone, he said nothing. But the motel manager in Casper remembered seeing someone else with him briefly, a woman with dark hair, the night of August 29th. She had not stayed. She had left quickly. Investigators now had a new concern. Ashley White was still out there, possibly still moving with support. On the morning of August 31st, 2020, at precisely 4:18 a.m., a multi-agency task force led by the U.S. Marshals executed a coordinated arrest at room 12 of the Gray Cliff Motel in Casper, Wyoming. The man they apprehended, Michael Stratton, had been evading law enforcement for over 2 weeks, moving across state lines using cash, false names, and low-traffic transit systems to avoid detection. Surveillance footage from the motel and testimony from a front desk clerk confirmed his presence the night before. A .22 caliber pistol was recovered from beneath his mattress. It was loaded. The serial number had been deliberately scratched off, but toolmark analysis later restored enough of the imprint to confirm the weapon originated from a manufacturer in Texas. Test firings performed by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Firearms and Toolmarks Unit matched the casing striations from the shell casings found in the backyard of Cody DeLisa's residence. Statistically, the probability of the weapon being unrelated was negligible. Stratton was taken into custody without incident. He carried no phone, wallet, or identification. When questioned at booking, he refused to speak. He invoked his right to counsel and provided no information. However, forensic analysis confirmed that his left index fingerprint matched a partial print recovered from the interior of a latex glove found on Cody's property. The same glove also bore Ashley White's DNA on its outer surface. No other forensic evidence directly tied Stratton to the murder scene, but this combination, presence at the location, access to the weapon, and coordination with a co-conspirator, was enough. With Stratton in custody, attention turned to the broader prosecutorial strategy. Ashley White remained at large, but the prosecution determined that Stratton could be tried independently. The case had sufficient physical, digital, and circumstantial evidence to support a murder charge. A grand jury returned a formal indictment on charges of second-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and unlawful possession of a firearm. The trial date was set for January 2021. The prosecution's theory was built around digital communication between Stratton and Ashley White, untraceable in content, but undeniable in frequency and coordination. Wi-Fi data, geolocation metadata, and surveillance records placed them in the same library at the same times, across multiple days in early August. Ashley's discarded phone contained a locally stored document labeled Plan, outlining steps that match key elements of the homicide: gloves, transit route, distraction techniques, and separate exits. Footage showed Ashley and Stratton riding the same bus to Commerce City, exiting within seconds of each other. Another clip showed them using Cody's debit card together at a gas station after the estimated time of death. Stratton's defense rested on diminished capacity. His attorneys introduced past records of erratic behavior, a history of psychiatric holds, and a 2016 domestic incident that suggested underlying instability. But the court-appointed psychological evaluation determined that Stratton was competent to stand trial. He understood the charges, the proceedings, and had the ability to assist in his own defense. That conclusion shut down the argument for an insanity plea. In court, Stratton remained silent. He did not testify. No confession was offered. The prosecution methodically walked the jury through forensic reports, surveillance timelines, and digital traces. A forensic analyst testified about the fingerprint match on the glove. A ballistics expert explained how the recovered pistol produced the exact same striations as the shell casings found in Cody's backyard. A digital forensic examiner laid out how Ashley and Stratton's phones pinged the same library router during synchronized time frames. The ADA emphasized that even without Ashley present, the evidence showed Stratton acted in deliberate coordination, carried out the killing, and fled. On February 2, 2021, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Michael Stratton was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge noted in his closing remarks that the use of anonymous forums to solicit or manipulate others into violence created a new alarming vulnerability in criminal law, a form of influence harder to trace than money, but just as effective. Ashley White remained a fugitive. While a federal warrant for her arrest remained active and her name flagged across all borders and travel records, no confirmed sightings had occurred since August 29th, when she was briefly seen in the motel parking lot in Casper. Officials believed she may have crossed into another state or used new false identities. Her digital footprint had gone completely dark. Cody DeLisa's family was present throughout the trial. In their final statement, his sister addressed the court by saying Cody's death was not just a result of violence, but of deception. She said, "My brother didn't die in a robbery. He didn't die in a fight. He died because two people decided he was disposable, and one of them never touched the gun." The case formally closed in the state of Colorado with Stratton's conviction, but investigators continued to track leads on Ashley. The case was profiled in internal training briefings at the CBI and later used as a digital forensic case study on cross-platform coordination and digital manipulation in modern homicides. To date, Ashley White remains at large. In the end, this wasn't just about a murder. It was about the quiet, calculated choices that led two people to destroy a life and disappear into the silence. I've seen how manipulation can look like loyalty and how easy it is to miss the warning signs until it's too late. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: anyone can be vulnerable to the wrong influence when they feel unheard, unseen, or desperate. And justice doesn't always come when or how we expect it. But it matters that we keep pursuing it. What do you think this case says about accountability in the digital age? Do anonymous platforms blur the lines of guilt? I'd love to hear your take. If this video made you think or feel, drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, or even why it made you uncomfortable. And hey, if you want more stories like this that hit deep and challenge how we see the world, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your voice matters here.